If you had told me that a 2 a.m. phone call would be the thing that cracked 6 years of careful self-control, I would have told you that you had the wrong guy. I am not the kind of person who loses his grip. I keep things neat. I keep things quiet. I keep things exactly where I put them. And for 6 years, I had put one very specific feeling in a very specific place and left it there. Locked, labeled, not touched. Until a Wednesday morning at 2 a.m. when my phone lit up on my nightstand and everything I had so carefully arranged stopped being arranged. I had been asleep for maybe an hour. I know that because I remember checking the time before I turned off my lamp, which was just past 1, and thinking that for once I was doing something right. Early night. No screens. Water on the bedside table like a responsible adult. And then my phone buzzed and I saw the name and my stomach did something I did not give it permission to do. Maya Reeves. I picked up on the second ring without thinking. That was my first mistake. My second mistake was assuming she was okay. She was not hurt. She was not in trouble. But the version of Maya on the other end of that call was not the version I was used to. Her voice was softer than normal. A little slower. The kind of slow that tells you someone has had a few drinks and let their guard drop somewhere they did not mean to leave it. I said her name. I said, "Hey, are you okay?" And she did not answer me. Not directly. Not right away. Because here is the thing I understood within about 4 seconds of listening. She had no idea she had called me. She thought she was talking to her sister. And what she said next, I have not been able to stop thinking about it since. She said, "You know who I think about every single day and cannot stop." I did not breathe. She laughed a little. Not a happy laugh. The kind that comes out when something is too big to carry quietly anymore and your body just lets a little of it out whether you want it to or not. Then she said, "He thinks we are just friends. He genuinely has no idea. And I have tried to talk myself out of it so many times and it just does not work. It has never worked." I was sitting on the edge of my bed by this point. I do not remember sitting up. I just was. My feet on the floor and the room dark and her voice in my ear saying things I had no framework for. She said he was steady. She said that being around him felt like turning down the volume on everything loud and exhausting in the world. She said she had never told anyone this. Not one person. And that saying it out loud, even to the wrong phone at 2 in the morning, felt like finally putting down something she had been carrying up a very long hill for a very long time. Then she went quiet. And then she said, "Hello? Are you still there? Did I call the wrong number?" I found something that resembled my voice. "Maya," I said, "I think you meant to call someone else." What followed was 5 seconds of silence that I felt somewhere behind my chest. Not in my head. In my chest. Like a sound too low to hear but not too low to feel. And then the line went dead. I sat there in the dark for a long time. Here is what I want you to understand about Maya Reeves before I tell you the rest of this. She was not someone I had a quiet crush on from a distance. She was not a coworker I saw on Tuesdays or a friend of a friend whose name came up at parties. She was the person I called when things went wrong. She was the person who showed up at my door with food before I had told her anything was wrong because she could read my 3-word text messages the way most people cannot read a whole conversation. We had been building something for 6 years that neither of us had ever properly named, and I had told myself, very convincingly, that the name did not matter. I had been lying to myself for 6 years. I was just very good at it. The thing about keeping a feeling locked away for that long is that it starts to feel like it belongs there. You stop noticing it the way you stop noticing a sound that never goes away. And then something happens and the sound gets loud and you realize you have not been ignoring it at all. You have been listening to it the whole time. You just stopped admitting that you were. I did not go back to sleep. I lay in the dark and I listened to the city outside my window and I thought about every single moment over 6 years that I had filed under the word friendship when there was probably a more honest word available. The drive she made across town on a Sunday night because my text sounded off. The way she memorized the small things I mentioned once and never brought up again, storing them somewhere careful like they mattered. The way she could tell, without me saying a single word, when I was pretending to be fine. I had called all of it closeness. And maybe it was. But maybe closeness had never been the whole story. By the time gray light started pushing through my curtains, I had made exactly one decision. I was not going to say anything. I was going to be decent about it. I was going to give her back the words she had said into the wrong phone in the dark and pretend I had never heard them. I was very sure about that decision. It lasted about 11 hours. I got to work on time. That was the first thing I was proud of. I made my coffee, I sat at my desk, I opened my laptop, and for approximately 4 minutes I was a functioning person with a normal life who had slept a reasonable number of hours and had no particular reason to keep picking up his phone and putting it back down again. Then Daniel walked in. Daniel had been my closest friend at work for 3 years, and he had a specific skill that I found both useful and deeply inconvenient depending on the day. He could look at a person for about 8 seconds and tell you exactly what kind of morning they were having. He sat down across from me, opened his bag, pulled out his lunch even though it was barely 9 in the morning, looked at me for what I estimated to be 6 seconds and said, "Who is she?" Not a question. A statement. Delivered with the calm confidence of someone who already knew the answer and was just giving you the opportunity to say it first. I told him I had not slept well. He nodded slowly in the way that meant he heard me and was choosing not to believe me. Then he said, "You have checked your phone 4 times since I sat down. You checked it twice before I sat down." I counted from the door. I put my phone face down on the desk. He waited. I told him the outline. Not the details, just the shape of it. Late call. 2 in the morning. Someone important to me said something she did not know I was there to hear. I did not know what to do with it. Daniel was quiet for a moment. He had the kind of patience that most people lose by their mid-20s, but he had somehow kept his, and he used it now, just letting the silence sit there until I was done not talking. Then he said, "Do you want an honest read, or do you want me to just sit here with you while you pretend you are fine?" "Honest," I said. He nodded. "Do not act like it did not happen. That is the thing. People think the kind thing is to pretend. But pretending does not protect anyone. It just makes the distance permanent." I thought about that for the rest of the morning. Through 2 meetings I barely tracked. Through a lunch I barely tasted. Through an afternoon where every task I finished felt like something I was doing with half my brain while the other half stayed parked somewhere else entirely. I wrote Maya's name in a message box 4 different times and deleted it 4 different times. "Hey, did you get home okay?" 2 pointed. "Hey, how was the rest of your night?" Worse. "Hey, funny story." Absolutely not. I put the phone in my bag at 3 o'clock and left it there. Here is the thing about Maya that made all of this harder. She did not just occupy space in my life. She structured it. The way a wall structures a room. You do not notice it until you imagine the room without it, and then you cannot stop noticing. We had met at a rooftop event 6 years ago that neither of us had wanted to attend. We had both been working our way toward the exit at the same time, drinks in hand, and had ended up at the far railing talking for 4 hours like people who had known each other far longer. She had told me that night that she did not trust people who were too comfortable in loud rooms. I had told her I felt exactly the same. We had laughed about it. 2 people at a party independently trying to leave, ending up staying because of each other. That was 6 years ago. And in 6 years we had built the kind of friendship that most people spend a lifetime looking for and some people never find. The kind where silence is not uncomfortable. The kind where you do not have to perform or explain or manage the impression you are making. You just show up and the other person already knows you, and that is enough. I had called that friendship for 6 years. Every time the other word got too close, I called it friendship and filed it away and moved on. And it had worked. Right up until 2 in the morning on a Wednesday when Maya's voice came through my phone soft and unguarded and said the thing she had never said to anyone. I went home that evening and sat on my couch and did not turn on anything. No television. No music. Just the low sound of the buildings settling around me and the city doing what cities do outside. I sat there and I let myself think about it without managing it for the first time. Not the surprise of it. Not what it meant for what came next. Just the thing itself. The fact that Maya Reeves had been carrying something for 6 years that matched the shape of what I had been carrying for 6 years, and neither of us had ever said a word. There is a version of this story where I convince myself I am protecting her by staying quiet. By letting the call disappear into the distance and going back to what we were. I almost talked myself into that version. Felt like the responsible thing. The considerate thing. The thing a good friend would do. But Daniel's words kept coming back. Pretending does not protect anyone. It just makes the distance permanent. I picked up my phone. I opened her name. I looked at the blank message for a long time. And then I put the phone down again. Not because I had decided to say nothing, but because what I needed to say was not something I could fit into a text message. It was not something I could type and send and wait for a response to while sitting alone in my apartment at 9 at night. It deserved a real moment. A table. A contact. Two people in the same room being honest at the same time. I did not know yet that she was already planning to be in the same room. My phone buzzed at 8:43 the next morning while I was standing in the coffee line outside my building. I looked down and there was her name and a message so casual it almost made me laugh. Free for coffee later? Usual spot around 1. I stared at it long enough that the man behind me cleared his throat. I typed back, "Yeah, see you there." And then I stood there holding my phone and thinking that for someone who had spent the last 12 hours carefully deciding to say nothing, I was suddenly very aware that I had absolutely no idea what I was going to say. I arrived 8 minutes early. I never arrived early to anything. She was already at the table when I walked in. That was the first thing that caught me off guard. Maya was never early. In 6 years, I had never once arrived somewhere to find her already there. She was the kind of person who moved through the world at exactly the pace she intended, never rushing, never late, always arriving at precisely the moment she had decided to arrive. So seeing her sitting at our usual table by the window with her hands wrapped around a mug she had already ordered, her eyes finding mine the second I walked through the door, told me something important before either of us had said a single word. She had needed the extra minutes. She had come early because she needed to already be settled before I got there. I sat down. I ordered my coffee. And then we looked at each other across a small table in a coffee shop we had been coming to for 4 years, and the silence between us was absolutely nothing like our usual silences. Our usual silences were easy, the kind you could live inside comfortably. This one had edges. She spoke first. "I owe you an apology," she said. "And I need you to know that I am genuinely embarrassed in a way I have not been since I was about 17 years old." I told her she did not need to apologize. She looked at her mug. Her voice was steady, but I could hear the work that steadiness was costing her. She said she had been out with friends, that the night had gone longer than she planned, that she had meant to call her sister and had clearly not pulled that off. She said it did not have to mean anything, that we were solid, that one bad misdial was not going to make things strange between two people who had been as close as we had been for as long as we had. Then she looked up and met my eyes fully and said, "You are too important to me for things to get weird." Her fingers were gripping the mug just slightly too hard. I noticed that. I noticed it because in 6 years I had learned to read the small things. Maya was not a person who showed nerves easily. She was the kind of person who walked into difficult rooms and made them feel manageable. But right now, across a coffee shop table, she was holding her mug like it was the only fixed point in a shifting room. And that told me more than anything she had said. I told her we were fine, that nothing was strange, that she did not need to keep apologizing. She let out a breath so small and quiet that if I had not been paying close attention I would have missed it entirely. Her shoulders dropped just slightly. She smiled, careful and controlled, and said good. And then she said it again. Good. We talked for almost an hour after that. She told me about a project at work that was eating her schedule alive. I told her about a disagreement I was having with my landlord about a broken heater that had somehow turned into a 3-week standoff. She described a film she had seen over the weekend in meticulous detail, clearly aware that I would find it unwatchable, clearly enjoying that fact. It was warm and easy and so much like us that if you had been watching from another table you would have had no idea anything significant was sitting in the middle of it. But I was paying a different kind of attention now. I noticed the way she asked about my work, threading in details from conversations we had weeks ago without seeming to notice she was doing it. I noticed the way she laughed at something I said. Not the polished version, the real one, the one that made her close her eyes for a second. I noticed the way she tracked what I was saying, not like someone being polite, but like someone who had been quietly storing these moments for reasons she had not let herself examine too closely. I had been doing the same thing. For years. Walking back to my office afterward, I felt something shift in how I was holding all of it. Not urgency exactly. More like clarity. The kind that arrives quietly and does not announce itself, but once it is there you cannot find the version of yourself that existed before it. Daniel fell into step beside me on the pavement outside my building, coffee in hand, and looked at me for approximately 3 seconds. He said, "That went better than you expected." I said, "I did not say anything." He said, "I know. That is how I know it went better than you expected." I sat at my desk for the rest of the afternoon and I thought about what came next. Not the feeling. I had stopped pretending the feeling was something I needed to examine. That part was clear. What I was thinking about was the how. Because Maya was not simply someone I cared about. She was the architecture of my daily life. The person I called when things fell apart and the person I wanted to tell when something good happened. Getting this wrong was not just a personal risk. It was a risk to something I had spent 6 years building and could not afford to lose. So I waited. Not out of fear but out of respect. For her, for us, for the thing that deserved to be handled carefully. 3 weeks passed. Ordinary on the surface. Coffee, messages, a Saturday at the market where we argued for 20 minutes about whether a particular cheese was worth the price she paid for it. She was wrong. She knew she was wrong. She bought it anyway. I did not say "I told you so" because I had learned years ago that this particular battle was never worth winning. But underneath the ordinary something was building. I could feel it the way you feel a change in weather before any cloud appears. A slow, quiet pressure. Like the story was preparing itself for whatever came next. I did not have to wait long to find out what that was. She called me on a Tuesday afternoon and I heard it in her first word. Not panic. Worse than panic. The low, heavy sound of someone who had just had something important taken away and had not yet figured out what to do with the space it left behind. The consultancy project she had spent 18 months on, from the very first meeting to the very last draft, had been shut down. Leadership decision. New direction. No conversation, no warning, just a calendar invite and a 15-minute call and then silence. "I keep telling myself it is just work," she said. Then she stopped. "I do not think I am convincing myself." I said, "You built that thing from nothing. It was never just work and you already know that." She went quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I do not want to be alone tonight." Not a question. Not a request. Just a fact she trusted me enough to say out loud. I was already reaching for my jacket. "I want to tell you something before I tell you how this ends. There is a version of this story where 2 people realize how they feel about each other and it is simple. Clean. 2 lines moving toward each other and meeting in the middle without anything difficult in the way. That is a good story. But it is not this one. This one had 6 years of careful silence in it. It had fear dressed up as practicality. It had 2 people who were genuinely good at protecting each other from everything except the one conversation that actually needed to happen. So when I tell you what came next, I want you to understand that nothing about it felt small in the moment. It felt like the biggest thing either of us had ever done. Because it was. I stopped at the Thai place on her street. The one she ordered from on bad days. I knew that detail the way I knew her coffee order and the way she hummed quietly when she was concentrating and the name of the street she grew up on. You do not collect those things on purpose. You collect them because the person matters and paying attention is the most honest thing you know how to do. She opened the door before I had finished knocking. She looked tired. Not broken. Just worn in the quiet way that comes from caring about something deeply and watching it be taken without ceremony. She looked at the food in my hands, then at me, and something in her face moved in a way she did not try to stop. "You remembered," she said. "I always remember," I said. We sat on her couch and she talked and I listened. Not the kind of listening where you are preparing your response. The kind where you are simply there, fully, because that is what the moment needs and you are not going to shortchange it. She told me about the first meeting where nobody believed in the project except her. She told me about the team she had built around it, people who had trusted her judgment and worked hard because she had made them feel like the work meant something. She told me about sitting alone in the office after the call ended. The room suddenly very quiet, not knowing what to do with her hands. I did not try to fix any of it. There was nothing to fix. I just stayed. At some point the words ran out. Not because she had finished but because the day had finally caught up with her and her body had decided that was enough for now. She was leaning against the armrest, eyes half closed, the city lights making slow shapes in the window behind her. The room was quiet in a way that felt full rather than empty. And then she said it. That night I called you. Her voice was low, but there was nothing uncertain in it. I meant what I said. I was not confused, and it was not the drinks talking. I knew exactly what I was saying. I just did not know you were the one listening. I did not look away. I know, I said. She turned her head and looked at me. Really looked. The kind of looking that does not leave room for performance or careful management. Just two people in a quiet room finally seeing each other without anything in the way. I have been trying to find somewhere to put it, she said, for a long time, but wherever I was keeping it stopped holding. I looked at her, this person who had shown up for me more times than I had ever properly counted, who remembered the things I said once and never repeated, who could tell from 3 words in a text message that I was not okay and would drive across the city on a Sunday without being asked, who made me want to be more present and more honest in every room I walked into simply by being the kind of person she was. Mine stopped holding a long time ago too, I said. I just kept telling myself the wall was still standing. She reached over and took my hand. She did not say anything. She did not need to. The warmth of it, the quiet certainty of it, said the thing that words had been circling for 6 years without ever quite landing. We stayed like that for a long time. 3 weeks later, I was sitting on that same couch with a small box in my jacket pocket. I had been carrying it for 4 days. Not because I was uncertain, because the right moment was something I was not going to rush. She was telling me about a small town on the coast she had visited years before we met. A quiet place with no schedule and no noise and long evenings that asked nothing of you. She wanted to go back someday, she said. Stay for a while. Actually rest. Take me with you, I said. She turned and looked at me. I set my glass down on the table. I looked at this person who had been the truest and most constant presence in my adult life, reached into my jacket, and held out the box. Her eyes went straight to it and stayed there. I said, I have spent 6 years calling you my best friend, and I will always mean that. It will always be true. But it is not the full picture. The full picture is that you are the person I want to build my life with. Not eventually. Not someday when the timing is better. Right now. Starting from tonight. She looked at the ring for a long moment. Then she looked at me. Her eyes were bright in the way they got when she had stopped trying to manage what she was feeling and was just letting it be there. You have been carrying that for 4 days, she said. I was waiting for the right moment, I said. She laughed. The real one. The wide-open, unguarded one that she kept for the people she trusted completely. Then she reached out and lifted the ring from the box herself, held it in her palm, and looked at it the way you look at something you have already decided belongs to you. Yes, she said. That is a yes. I slid the ring onto her finger. She leaned forward and pressed her forehead against mine, and we stayed there in the warm and quiet of her apartment while the city moved on below us, indifferent and steady and completely unaware that something had just come to rest after a very long time in motion. 6 years. 6 years of keeping the most honest thing I felt stored under a safer name. And what I know now, sitting on the other side of all of it, is this. The feeling was never the hard part. The feeling had always been there, patient and clear, waiting for me to stop being afraid of it. The hard part was deciding that something real was worth the risk of saying it out loud. And the people worth keeping in your life, the ones who actually see you, they are usually already hoping you will.